The president threatens to remove the security clearance of some swamp dwellers. A war of words between the Iranian leader and the president. The socialist takeover of the Democrats and the sad tale of the happy camper food cart. All this and more on this edition of Truth is Making a Comeback.
Truth is making a comeback. America's top stories with Lisa K. Donner.
It didn't take long for the leftist media to go ballistic after President Trump threatened to remove the security clearance of former government officials. At a White House press briefing this week, it was announced that Trump just may take away these privileges from James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, Andrew McCabe, and Susan Rice. This after Kentucky Senator Rand Paul convinced the president that these folks were abusing their high-level security clearance by spilling to the press and monetizing it for personal gain. Paul met with the president, Trump liked the idea, and Press Secretary Sarah Sanders hit the briefing room with it. Let's listen in.
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe. The president is exploring the mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and security clearances. Making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president is extremely inappropriate, and the fact that people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence.
Before Sanders even stepped off the briefing lectern, an apoplectic leftist media went to their usual suspects to rake the president over the coals. CNN, who must have James Clapper on speed dial, immediately published his reaction to the president's threat. Quote, "I think this is just a very, very petty thing to do," he said. And why would that be? Stripping these folks of security clearance directly harms their ability to work as consultants and advisors in Washington, according to the New York Times. And that is precisely the point the president and Rand Paul are making. They are trading their high-level access to information for cash and influence peddling. Is the president able to revoke security clearance for these folks? That seems to be a gray area. But odds are that if Trump wants to make it happen, he will. And that means that Clapper and company may just want to zip it or be prepared to have their candy taken away. A war of words between President Trump and Iranian leader Hassan Rouhani seemed to come out of nowhere this week. But in fact, there is a backstory that the leftist media won't tell you about. In a Twitter message to the 7th president of Iran, Trump wrote in all caps, "Never ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences, the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious." Of course, the media didn't bother to find out why Mr. Trump issued such a strong warning. Joining us now is managing editor Mark Angelides with the backstory. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Lisa.
Mark, can you tell us what caused the president to write such a strongly worded message?
Well, in all honesty, these things, they don't happen in a vacuum. Many in the media would have you believe that Donald Trump was just sitting at home in the Oval Office and decided to send out a very, very strongly worded tweet. But there's so much backstory to this that's just being completely ignored. For example, just hours before he actually put this tweet out, President Rouhani was speaking to a large collection of Iranian diplomats and word for word said, peace with Iran is the mother of all peace. War with Iran is the mother of all war. And went on to talk about how America should not be grabbing the lion's tail of Iran. Now, while many will pick up that, but he did mention peace, this is just to make the threat of war even more foreboding. So it was basically a threat of war against America for pulling out of the Iran deal.
What specifically is Iran up to these days?
Well, they're busy. They're very busy. According to a range of reports coming out of German intelligence services, they are busy buying components for weapons, for nuclear missiles, various valves for developing fissionable material, etc. According to other reports from around the world, they are buying materials for weapons of mass destruction, so chemical, biological, and of course nuclear. On the home stretch, they are still oppressing their people greatly. There are what's known as modesty police roaming the streets who will, and any woman who dares to show her hair or dance is one that's coming out quite a lot on social media. They're being picked up by the modesty police. Their families get in trouble. These girls get in trouble. Obviously, they're still executing people in football stadiums. They're very busy. They're very busy. But the main thing they're doing is really trying to retaliate against America whilst shoring up support from the EU, specifically France and Germany.
From your perch, do you believe that the president's tweet was warranted?
Yes, absolutely. When a country threatens your country, you expect to give a response, surely. The idea that President Trump wouldn't respond to such provocation is quite ridiculous. I mean, it would essentially make them lose face with Iran, which would provoke Iranian government to carry on with these kind of threats. It's a very similar situation to the North Korea rocket man talks that we had months ago. And since then, of course, there's been 9 months without a single rocket being launched from North Korea. So that worked. And we're kind of hoping for the same outcome here is if you meet bullying with strength, then the bully invariably backs down. And the bully in this case is not Donald Trump, as the world's media would have you believe. The bully here is Iran.
Good stuff. Thank you. That's Mark Angelides, Liberty Nation's managing editor, reporting from London. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Lisa.
There's a lot going on in the Democratic Party these days, but much of it to no avail. After an exhaustive search, the Dems came up with a slogan for the midterms. For the people will be their rallying cry. Then their new superstar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, made a gaffe by saying the low unemployment rate was actually a negative sign. Unbelievably, she said that the reason unemployment has decreased is, quote, because everyone has 2 jobs. Any way you cut it, the Democratic Party is moving even farther to the left and embracing socialism. Joining me now is a man who has his finger on the pulse of the Dems, Liberty Nation's Jeff Charles. Jeff, what's the appeal of the Democrats with socialism?
So that's an interesting question. I think what it has to do with, and this is happening on both sides, where people want something different, especially in the 2016 election. Voters wanted something different on the left and on the right. On the right, it manifested in Donald Trump. Obviously, we're not going towards socialism, but we were disaffected with our establishment politicians. On the left, the same thing is happening. So people were disaffected with people like with Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and the rest of the more establishment figures. Instead, they went more for Bernie Sanders. So much so that Clinton basically had to cheat to get the nomination. So I think what's happening is that people are tired of just the status quo. So they did want somebody who promised something different.
So what you're saying is that the Democrats are gaining ground with the socialists just because they're wanting to change things up?
I think the other part of it, though, is that the far left is really pushing this on our universities. So our college students are being fed lines about socialism and being taught that it's a great ideology, but they're not really being taught about the actual impact that it has. So a lot of them come out of college thinking that they know what socialism is, but in a lot of cases, they don't really even understand what it is they're supporting and what it really means.
And now for my parting shot of the week. It's ironic that the Democrats have chosen "For the People" as their slogan for the upcoming midterms. I doubt the people who run the Happy Camper food truck in Portland, Oregon would agree. If you've never heard of it, the Happy Camper Food Truck is a nonprofit that raises money for Operation Off the Grid. Their mission is to help homeless people around the Portland, Oregon area. Unfortunately, the food truck is located across the street from the Portland Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement Facility. That's where these wonderful folks who are for the people have been holding a 6-week-long occupation and protest. Members of the so-called resistance aren't satisfied with blocking the street and interrupting ordinary working Americans, so they began to harass the food truck owner, his daughter, and then, of course, his customers. Naturally, Happy Camper business dropped 80%, but that's not all. According to the owner, Scott Hakes, protesters threatened to burn down the food cart on multiple occasions. They also took to cussing and screaming at his daughter, who, along with her boyfriend, manned the cart. Hakes called the Portland police multiple times, according to Portland's KATU news station, to report the harassment and threats, but apparently the abuse continued. And the food cart has been left with no option but to close its doors. And so, my friends, the resistance in Portland, Oregon can sleep well tonight, I suppose. They've managed to shutter a nonprofit that was helping the homeless. For the people? I think not. And that's my parting shot. I'm Lisa K. Donner. Join us again next time for Truth is Making a Comeback, America's Top Stories. Thanks so much for watching.
Truth is making a comeback. America's Top Stories with Lisa K. Donner.